Okay.
Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to today's webinar. We look forward to hosting you and look forward to hearing your questions later on. We hope that you are ready for today's session, and be sure to take notes and put together some key stories that you might wish to share and any question that you may have. Our speakers today have generously given their time to share their stories, and we look forward to hearing them. Good afternoon and welcome to today's talk. We welcome you to this webinar, kickstarting this new series. And we hope you are excited to be here and ready to hear the stories that are going to be shared and have some questions to ask after the talk. It is good to see a number of people who have already joined in and are ready to attend today's webinar with us. We welcome you all. We will just give our members and visitors a few more minutes to log in before we kickstart the official webinar, but we thank you for joining us right now, and we are excited to have you on board.
Hi, Rafi.
Hello.
How are you?
Hello, Rafi. How are you?
Hello, everyone. Nice to see you. Thanks for joining us.
Glad to be here.
Rafi.
Hi, Rafi.
Hello, hello. We have more than 20 participants.
Hi, Rafi.
Hello,
Good afternoon.
everyone.
Hi, Rafi.
Hey, Rafi. Hi, everyone.
Hello, everyone. Thank you very much for joining us. We have more than 20 participants in the room. That is very nice to see, and we are ready to start very, very shortly. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you for joining us today. We are excited to welcome you to this maiden webinar on the key values for your life and business. We are kickstarting a monthly series of talks that will take us through the 7 core values of BNI, reminding us of the importance and significance of these fundamentals. A few housekeeping matters before we dive right in. Kindly note that this will be recorded, and there will be an open question and answer session after the talk where you may not just post your questions for us to address them, but if there is something you wish to hear or share with us, please raise your hand so that you may be unmuted. Today, we will be tackling BNI's Value Series, Part 1, Givers Gain, and how these values manifest themselves and cause positive ripples through the core value and philosophy of Givers Gain, animating themselves in our lives and our businesses. Our talk would like to help its audience recognize members who have embodied, learned what the core values can do for them, grown with them, and who have embraced these both at a personal and professional level. As we know, the mission of BNI is to help members increase their business through a structured, positive, and professional referral marketing program that enables them to develop long-term, meaningful relationships with quality business professionals. At the basis of these are the core values of BNI. We know them to be givers gain, building relationships, lifelong learning, traditions and innovations, positive attitude, accountability, and recognition. Now, Ivan Meisner says it does not matter in which order you list the 7 core values, as long as givers gain is the first. Givers gain means helping others to achieve success, the concept of giving benefit to others, an ethical theme common to many cultures and religions. The givers gain philosophy is based on the law of reciprocity. This law can be defined as being intrinsic in human nature, and it is also a biblical principle. Lord Jesus is quoted as saying, "It is more blessed to give than to receive." In social psychology, the law of reciprocity is considered a factor that may make or break your business, as using it the right way helps to build trust and rapport, key elements in our very own BNI structure. Indeed, in the BNI context, we see this in members who adopt this philosophy and dedicate themselves to giving business to their fellow networkers rather than making it their foremost concern to get business for themselves. The Dalai Lama once said, "You have to start giving first and expect absolutely nothing." This statement for some personalities and business-minded thought structures might not seem to apply or make sense. But in the world of BNI, this has actually been proven to be one of the keys to the organization's success and the benefits it has brought to many of its members. Our guest speakers today are not just the well-known professionals many of us may recognize from our BNI networks, but they are also each the recipient of last year's Givers Gain Award in their chapter, as they were recognized for living out this key core value. And it is in the name of this very reciprocity that we have pointed out that our guest speakers have kindly joined us today to share their stories. Allow me to welcome them and introduce them. Our first speaker, the most elegant and analytical doctor in the house, Dr. Vincent Bachenga from Cambridge Health. With his international experience, he decided to bring his multiple skill set and calm demeanor back home. A family man who is always at hand to support and guide new BNI members, he has been known to selflessly and generously intervene in critical and time-sensitive situations to assist patients and relatives. A warm welcome to Dr. Vincent Bachenga. Our second speaker for today. As many of us know, the art of baking is a science, and behind science there is often the mystery of numbers. It makes such tasty, beautiful scents that Sophie Nkutu from Michaela's Oven uses her financial background to give us some of the tastiest cakes and cookies we know, and gluten-free too, may I add. A mentor for many a BNI member and pioneer of innovative systems for the organization, she is known to be a key player in anyone's team. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Sophie Nkutu. Our third speaker today, Mark Karamira Karigesa from SPE Taxi Cab Services Limited, a gentleman who has perfected the art of telling a truth which may sting, but with a gallant smile. His diplomatic and organizational skills make him manage logistics with flair as he shuttles travelers who are patiently waiting to take off once more from the heart of the city to the airport and back. A key figure in the BNI setup, as we know, he helps in making sure members are guided on the right path to follow as they enjoy the view. Welcome on board, Mark.
Thank you very much.
Now, thank you. And now allow me to start finding out, for our audience's pleasure, how today's value applies to these members' lives. Dr. Vincent, may I please ask you, how does Givers Gain apply? What does it mean to you at a personal level?
Thank you very much, Rafi. Givers Gain is a bit of a very interesting philosophy. I think the very first time I interacted with this value was interacting with my father when I was about 8 years old. We grew up in a middle class family, basic civil servant parents. And for some reason, we, ate hard bread once a week. We had 1 kilo of meat a week. And all at the same time, my dad was paying school fees for very many people, and he was helping very many people in the community. So I asked him, why don't you spend this money on us instead of spending it on all these people? Because we are your children, aren't we? And he took me aside and explained to me, and he said, you see, for each of these people that I help, it means that one, when you're much older, they will not come to disturb you, asking you for one or two things, but they will not only look after themselves, they will also look after their children. So I must say that his giving has actually helped me a whole lot, because not only are those people self-sustaining, but they also look after their families. And that stuck with me, and this is something that I've carried into my life. And I know that, for most of the people, I might never see the results, but I have every confidence that by helping one or two people, I actually gain. Thank you very much, Rafi.
Thank you very much, Dr. Vincent. That is quite a legacy that your father has left behind. It is nice to know that you too are carrying it forward in this thought. And may I please ask Mark the same? What does Givers Gain mean to you at a personal level?
I think for me, Givers Gain really is, if I had to use one word as a synonym, it would be trust. What goes around comes around. It's all about a trust relationship in Givers Gain. When you give, you're not guaranteed of getting anything back, but you give nonetheless, because in the event that the person you're giving to pays it back, then you know that you have established trust, and we cannot do much or achieve much without trust between two individuals. So sort of do unto others as you'd like to be done to you. But also, I think Givers Gain, if you're a person who wants or expects value, like I do, I had to pay for something and not get its value back, So if I want to expect value, I have to give it. So you cannot fail to give somebody and then expect that they'll give to you when your time comes or when you need. So in many respects, Givers Gain is sort of like you like pay it forward. It's like paying money into a savings account, knowing that it's accumulating, it's giving back to you. It may not be so obvious at the time that you're paying it in, but then you know what's coming down the road. Sooner or later, it will come back, and it will come back bigger than what you put in. So that's what Givers Gain means to me. It's also, I think, a bond and a brand. If like Bachenga said, his father had a brand, and that brand was that this gentleman was a person who gave. So people went to him seeking help, and they knew that you'd give. So it sort of embodies who you are. It becomes your brand as a person, and everybody. I mean, brands are always being built and invested heavily into, and so you don't need to invest too much into a personal brand if you believe in giver's gain, because it's a noble, it's a pleasant brand to associate somebody with. So it's important the way you brand yourself. It's important how you are looked at and perceived and known. And I would definitely like to be known as a person who gives and gives freely from the heart without any bukwakulizo. Sophie, you can translate.
Thank you for sharing those thoughts, Marx. And indeed, when we invest in the giver's gain philosophy, the person who helps or pays back may not necessarily be so obvious, and it may not be so immediate, but it is a long-term investment, and it definitely is something which enriches ourselves as well. And Sophie, may I please come to you with the same question and ask you what giver's gain means to you at a personal level?
Thank you, Rafi, and good afternoon, everyone. I think for me at a personal level, I probably grew up with a philosophy of giving is a must. You don't ask any questions. If there is something that is needed by somebody and you can do it, you go ahead and you do it. And I've grown up, I think, with role models who made it seem like that's just the way the world should be. So my father disappeared when I was 3 years old, so I barely remember him. But up to today, I meet people who, when they hear my name, they say, I went to school because of your dad. I wasn't in school. I was on the roadside selling sweet potatoes, and he was driving in his ministerial car from UGANDA to Kampala, and he stopped, saw me by the roadside on a school day, drove me to the nearest school and enrolled me, and he received my reports from the headmaster every term. And I still come across many, many people who tell me, this is someone who disappeared in 1973, but up to today, I get to hear those stories. My mom was one of those people who didn't have that much, but somehow always seemed to have enough for everyone. And even when you think you're at the last coin, someone will show up and she'll say, Sophie, behind the drawer, in this other thing, in this other little envelope, there's a little money, you get it and give it to this person. So I've grown up around people who give naturally and with no expectation of getting anything in return. We keep teasing my older brother that if he had kept a ledger book of all the people he has given, he would have a block of condominiums probably in Colorado with that money, because anyone who comes to him, he will literally give freely and with no expectation of getting anything in return. So giving, I think, is something that comes naturally. I think when I joined BNI, that's when the word gain got attached to giving in my mind. Before, it was just like, you give because, yeah, that's the way the world is. Why wouldn't you? You must do that. I've also had an aunt, she's passed away now, but that aunt of mine gave to everybody. And at her eulogies, everybody kept saying, in Luganda, we say, Mukwana Gwabanji, the friend of everybody. From the border rider, to a minister, to an MP, to royalty, everybody was her friend. She was so generous. When you spoke to her, you would think you are the most important person in the world to her. And so that is the impact that she left with literally everybody who she interacted with. So I think those are examples that have shown me that giving is not a chore, it's not a task. You don't have to think about it. Do it freely, and do it with no expectation of anything in return.
Thank you for sharing that, Sophie. It's wonderful to see these unsung heroes brought to life. Sometimes some of the most noble souls do things very quietly, but the ripples of benefits they leave behind are huge. So thank you for sharing that with us. Ladies and gentlemen, the audience, please remember that this is an interactive session. Once I am done asking our panelists the questions that I have on the ready for them, I will be coming to you. So make sure that you type out your questions in the Q&A. And if you wish to share something as well, because your stories are also important to us, please make sure you raise your hands so that you can be unmuted and share your video. I am now coming back to my speakers with another series of questions. And Dr. Vincent, back to you. Was Giver's Gain something that you practiced before realizing that it works as a core value at BNI at a professional level too?
Thank you very much, Rafi. I think, like Sophie pointed out, to me, I actually came to the realization that Givers Gain, I think, after I joined BNI, because I've really been more of a perpetual receiver. For example, when I went to university in Poland for 4 years. And for 4 years, I never met a single Ugandan. I never received any more than, $100 from my families. But my education, my sustenance was really paid for by people that I never knew before I went to that country. So for me, I knew that I owe it to this world. I owe it to the universe to give, because I'm only but a product of, receiving. People have given to me, people from Europe, people from North America, people that I even didn't know. So I think for me, it's a duty. It's a duty to give, not only in medicine, not only in my business, but for me, it's really a duty to give. And for example, one of the most important things for us as a business at Cambridge, or the thing that I take the most pride in, is the fact that we employ about 20-25 people. It might not be a very big institution, but by just giving those people a purpose, giving them a reason to exist, for me, I feel is a very, very big thing. So Givers Gain, I couldn't live without giving, and then somehow the gain comes, but really more about the giving. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Vincent, and I can very much testify to the importance and value you place to human relations. You've shared your stories with me before, and I see it in your elegance and kindness and the time and care you take with people, how you live this value out. Thank you. Mark, may I ask you the same, please? Is Giver's Gain something that you practiced before realizing how it works as a core value in BNI at a professional level too?
Absolutely. In fact, it's even the one that sold me on BNI, the Giver's Gain philosophy. It had come natural to me. I picked it up also, just like Sophie and Vincent. I think it was a quality that was really strongly held in our parents and grandparents. And so I picked it up from my two role models, who are my mother and my late paternal grandfather. I saw them practice it throughout life, and it's an endearing trait. It's an endearing virtue that you people come and unsolicited, they don't ask, but you find out what state they're in, how they're doing, and you just freely give to them. It exuded this abundance of life, and that you don't lack. You have, and therefore you can share and you can give, even when somebody hasn't come explicitly to ask you for it first. So seeing these values in my two very dear role models, it was already in me. And before I joined BNI, I was really struggling with the business world in Uganda. I think I was still a little naive. It was all about giving, not even expecting anything back, but knowing that as decent human beings, it should come back around. It should yield something, and it wasn't very obvious out there. And so I came into a space in BNI where this was front and center. This was the core of what holds this organization together. It's what the organization was built on. And so I thought, wait a minute, this is out of this world, I live in this world, and everybody that I encounter and interact with and transact with does not exude this in the slightest form. And yet here I am in this organization where they say, look, this is our motto. This is our motto. And so if you're going to be part of this organization, you have to. I'm like, wait, I have been looking for you. It has not been you been looking for me. It has been looking for you. So it's, I was already living it out, and it's really what sold me on BNI right from the get-go.
Wonderful, thank you. I know that when Mark is inspiring new and old BNI members, he makes it very clear that the more you have to give and share, you shouldn't be building higher walls, but building longer tables, and how empowering it is when you learn the giver's gain philosophy. Thanks for sharing that, Mark. Sophie, may I come back to you, please, and ask you if giver's gain was something that you practiced before realizing how it works as a core value in BNI at a professional level too?
Rafi, was it something I practiced before? Probably not consciously, probably unconsciously. But like Dr. Vincent, I think I've been the recipient of a lot of people giving to me, and they gave to me for no reason. They didn't have any motivation. They didn't have any ulterior objectives. They just naturally helped me, guided me, pushed me along, gave me wisdom, opened doors. And so whenever you reflect back, you're like, if it hadn't been for that one person, either taking a leap of faith with me, trusting me, seeing more than what I can see in myself, because I've often had people say, no, you can definitely do that. This is not good enough for you. You can definitely do something more, which possibly I wouldn't have recognized in myself at the time. It got me to really appreciate that there are opportunities everywhere, that everybody has something unique or strong or special about them. And if you are in their space, it is my role, if I'm in their space, it's my role to see how to get that best out of them. To see maybe something that, it could be someone who has a personality where they beat themselves down a lot, and probably nobody has ever said to them, you know, you're a lot better than that. So professionally, I have found myself, most of my former staff, I've worked in many countries now, many of them call me a teacher. And I just thought I was doing my job as a manager, get them to do things well so that, you know, my work is good. But many of them still refer to me as teacher. Many of them call me mama, which is quite funny. But that's one thing that most people at least have come back to give me feedback later and say, I work better, I deliver better because of you. And I realized that those little things, it's not something that was difficult for me to do. It's not something that I had to sit down and do a flow chart and plan it all out. It was more, when I've been in this situation at one point in the past, somebody helped me. I can see that this person could possibly be helped by what I have to contribute. And when I've done that, usually you don't get to realize the impact anytime soon. In many cases, it's years later, where either you come across that person or you come across a friend or a peer of that person who says, wow, this person says this is how you impacted them. And I think that's really rewarding. That's really rewarding. And so it's something that I think, yes, I did probably do before getting to know BNI, but not consciously. And I think having been introduced into the BNI world, I think it's something which I can actually even be more intentional about, so that I don't just randomly get an opportunity to help somebody, but sometimes can seek out the opportunity to help.
Thank you very much, Sophie. Sometimes we have these so-called best I was saying, Sophie, thank you very much for sharing that with me. Sometimes we have what are known as the world's best kept secrets, and one of those is how quietly and stealthily you work to make things work for others, and it is truly appreciated. It is just like the art of giving the perfect cake. No one knows how much one struggled to make sure it came together for that ultimate presentation. Thank you very much, Sophie. Ladies and gentlemen, let me remind you that I have one more question for our panelists, and then the floor is yours. Be sure to start typing out your questions when we open the Q&A. If there is something you wish to share, be ready to share your video and be unmuted. Back to my speakers. Dr. Vincent, may I ask you, as Giver's Gain is about impacting others, how have you seen this manifest itself in others around you in your time at BNI?
It's an interesting question. Give as gain is a very, very interesting principle. I think it's one of the principles that institutions like Rotary and all those other institutions are built around. But again, like we pointed out earlier, the gain really comes out strongly in BNI. And I think most times, I think as Ugandans, we are afraid to give sometimes so much because we think that by actually giving, we are losing. So by bringing that one out, that actually when you give, you gain, I think that has been powerful. How have I seen this played out? Well, I want to say that, the things that I've seen in BNI are, pretty much amazing, because even a simple thing as inviting someone to a BNI meeting, actually inviting your friend to a BNI meeting, you're actually giving to them. So I'll maybe give a very simple story. I used to have, Dr. Deborah used to be my neighbor. I used to stay somewhere a few years ago, and she was my neighbor for over 4 years. And when I joined BNI, I never thought to invite her. So one day I decided, let me just invite her. I knew she was into teaching. Maybe this whole networking thing might not be for her, but I persisted. I invited her. 4 or 5 months later, she joins. And then what happened? I'd been looking for this referral for so long. I'd been looking for someone in school. And then this one time, she comes to Cambridge for a one-to-one. I think it was 3 o'clock. I tell her, this is the person I want. And I'm not kidding. The next day, she walked into the BNI meeting on Wednesday with Dr. Barbara. And the referral that I've received through that connection have literally transformed Cambridge, allowing us to move from 10 to 20, 25 employees. So, you just have to give, because you really don't know what's going to happen on the other end. So I've seen amazing things happen around me just based on that principle of give as gain. Thank you very much, Rafi.
Thank you, Dr. Vincent. What a beautiful story indeed. Reciprocity cannot be measured until you see exactly how this can happen and manifest itself. Well done. Mark, may I please ask you, because you know so well how Givers Gain is about impacting others, how have you seen this manifest itself in and around you in your time at BNI?
It's quite amazing. It's sort of when you don't expect that you can swim, or maybe you're not sure, you haven't swum much, and they throw you to the deep end and you find yourself doing the backstroke, floating effortlessly. It's I think a lot of the BNI members, and it's the magnet that draws them to BNI. They already have it in them, and I think are just looking for that space. And so when they find it in BNI, they now flourish, like a flower with the right conditions. They just open up and start to exude this Givers Gain philosophy. And so I've seen, it's funny how, how BNI is set up, is that during the meeting, you will have members do a 30-second presentation where they basically educate fellow members about the business they're looking for, and will ask for the referrals that they want. And this is where you see the Givers Gain play itself out. You have members competing to give this member the referral they're asking for. Somebody will say, I'm looking for a referral to the Prime Minister's office. We want to supply them some equipment or something like that. And guys stand up and say, I can take you there. And somebody else will say, if that guy delays, I'll take you there. And another person says, I can take you there before them. So you have these guys. There's no kickback, there's no commission, there's no thing, but you have people competing. Muted. The music is nice, but it's distractive. Connect you to the person that you're looking for. And I really have to mention just 2 names here that just pop up to mind when I think of this. My members in my BNI chapter of integrity, and that's Ranjit Kumar of Elite Computers and Tracy Intavazi of Concrete Flooring Solutions. These guys, of course, we started out together right from the very beginning of BNI 5 years ago. But they exude this give as gain philosophy so much that Ranjit is forever trying to give. Like he cannot outgive. He can't be outgiven. He's always giving. He'll call you. He'll say, "Have you talked to this? He'll send a screenshot of a Facebook post. There's an opportunity. Do you see it?" They are always updating you. You feel bad. You're like, what can I give to this person? What can I give them to show them how I appreciate their giving? We are forever giving. Tracy, there's this opportunity. I was just talking to the country manager of this organization. I think they may need your service. They're constantly looking for, even where you don't see the opportunity. They're like, is it something that can work? Can we take you there? Should we? What do you want us to do? And you're confused. You're like, can you give me a day to think about how I can leverage this opportunity so that I don't waste it? So you're overwhelmed by how much giving there is in BNI. And what still blows me away even to this day is that people are not expecting anything back. They are not expecting anything back. So it's a bit unsettling. You've grown up with this Mfunida Mua, what is in it for me? That's how everyone approaches things. So when you interact with people at a high level professionally, very well connected, who are opening up these networks to you but do not expect anything in return, you sort of wonder what the catch is. So it has definitely impacted my business. I've been a member 5 years. I've built my company on the back of BNI and of such members who are continuously giving. And you just never know where people will take you. Again, I say that when people come into BNI, it's like all of a sudden they flourish, they open up and blossom. But before that, if you had gone and asked, Dr. Bachenga, I would like to meet so and so, he'd be like, I'm not sure about you. Who are you? Where do you come from? What do you do? I don't know if I can trust you like that with this contact. But then in BNI, somebody visits you for one-to-one and you say, by the way, there's this opportunity. And they will suggest and say, do you know so-and-so? And you're thinking, yeah, of course I know so-and-so. I mean, they are high profile. Like, would you like to meet them? I'm like, yeah, but what do you expect from that meeting? Are you just opening up that network to me just like that? And it is just like that in BNI, So it manifests itself on a daily basis in the most amazing ways. And we have seen amazing business. I mean, $1 million to be specific, exchanged in BNI just because somebody is willing to give or to open up a network for somebody else. So if a mere act of giving, a law of life, if that mere act of giving can generate somebody $1 million, imagine if we really made it a way of life, how many opportunities, not just monetary, but other opportunities as well, that would open up to people. So I've definitely seen it play out in BNI. I've seen it manifest itself in so many members, to the tune of, I think in my chapter, 15 billion shillings over 5 years. And that is all because of givers gain. That is all because of givers gain. There's nothing more to it. It would be, if it was an equation, it would be the simplest equation. Givers gain equals 15 billion over 5 years in BNI integrity. If you had to put it on a weighing scale, that's how much the givers gain in my chapter weighs. 15 billion shillings worth right now, and growing every day. So, I mean, it's such a no-brainer that I wish more people would experience, would catch COVID givers gain 2020 instead of COVID-19. COVID givers gain, so that they catch the virus and start giving.
Thank you for that, Mark. Indeed, what a beautiful equation. Givers gain equals 50 billion shillings. And not just that after all, because you've testified to the fact that people are being more than just present in the room. And success for both parties in this case means getting involved and being willing to share. Thank you. Sophie, may I come to you with the same question, please? As Givers Gain is about impacting others, how have you seen this manifest itself for you in BNI?
Thank you, Rafi. I think I can best answer that question by just sharing what I've experienced, and I'll pick out for now just 3 members because of time. The first of those is a member in my chapter called Wilbur Nwamanya. He's a tax specialist. And Wilbur has been, he's given so much free advice. He will help, he will do calculations for you and so on. And you sort of hold your breath waiting for the bill, thinking, when this bill comes, I'm finished. And he can actually give you a bill and say, Sophie, just pay some transport. I think this is what you can manage. I know what's going on in your business. This will be enough. And you're so relieved and you're so grateful because he didn't have to do that. He could have given you really the bill that is worth the work that he did. And so I'm really grateful to interact with people like Wilbur, who will basically give of all his knowledge and expertise and give you a bill based on the little he thinks you can afford at the time. The other example I have really experienced strongly, again, a member in my chapter, Susan Sibira. When you need a referral, Susan is not the type to pass you a phone number. She will check her schedule. And I've experienced this in one particular meeting where I was dying to be introduced to a particular school. And I asked, I was specific is terrific. And she's like, oh, you want them? And she literally got her phone, checked it, and she said, let's go. And we literally drove there straight from a BNI meeting, and she walked me straight into the office of the principal, no less, you know. And this is a school that is not easy to just go breezing in. You can barely get past the security guards. But now the principal calls me to chit chat about trifle because I gave her a trifle in December and she's still talking about it, you know? And when I look at how many of Susan's network literally just pick up the phone, when she hears someone even thinking of a function, she's like, oh, cool, so she'll sort you out. So it's someone who gives freely of their network. I have a member in Sunrise chapter who also happens to be an old friend, Jackie Namara. But everybody in my bakery knows the name Rukari because every week, we will get orders from people who have the name Rukari in their name somewhere. So much so that some of her in-laws who are actually bakers, they call and they order cakes. They call and order cakes from me. So I've seen really, really powerful examples of givers gain. I don't know if Patrick is on this call, but I always take opportunity to share a story about Patrick Ngolobe. He's not somebody that I knew before BNI. I knew him from the newspapers, just seeing all his articles, very clever stuff. And then he shows up at the bakery one day, and I was like, oh, I know this. I think this guy is in BNI. He looked around, he had a cup of tea, and he basically imparts words of wisdom. It comes so naturally to Patrick that I don't think he even realizes he's doing it. Meanwhile, while he's chit-chatting, I want to get a pen and write everything down because I'm like, I must remember all of this stuff because if I ask him again in his office, I won't afford the invoice. And we did an expansion recently at the bakery. He came in, he looked around, and he says, there are things missing on your walls. I don't see your flow charts. I don't see your process flows. And I'm like, oh yeah, you know, the order comes, we bake. He said, no, this is not a bakery. This is a manufacturing facility. You need to stop thinking that this is a cuddly, cozy little bakery you're working out of the garage in your house. This is a full-fledged manufacturing facility. And he asked me, how do you keep yourself up to date in terms of knowledge of this business? And I told him, oh, you know, I watch a lot of videos every single week. I watch lots. He said, oh, videos about cake and cookies and stuff. I said, yes. And he said, yeah, my 10-year-old daughter watches those videos. Mama Dora, who's making mandazi, when she gets some data, she watches those videos. He said, Sophie, you are a manufacturer. You just happen to manufacture baked products. Can you please change the videos that you're watching? And there was a lot of traffic that he had literally just come to pick his bread and ran to dodge the traffic. He opened his laptop and he showed me 2 videos about lean manufacturing, the 7 deadly wastes of manufacturing, 6 Sigma. And he says, change the videos that you're watching. Honestly, my jaw was on the floor. I couldn't stop laughing at myself, thinking I've been watching videos, yes, which his 10-year-old daughter is also watching. And yet I'm thinking I'm running a full-fledged, professional business. So any opportunity, guys, on this call, if you've never come across Patrick, find a reason for him to drop by your place, because every single time you have even a 5-minute conversation, I feel like I've done another module of an MBA course. And this for me is a perfect example of what BNI does. Honestly, in a normal day, I would not be able to afford an invoice from Patrick because I know what his knowledge and his experience is worth. I wouldn't be able to afford it. So when he happens to place an order, if I was planning to be somewhere that day, I try and hang around to make sure I will be there when he comes, because even in 5 minutes, I will get amazing, amazing words of wisdom. So for members in BNI, for all of you members in BNI, it's something that I always say, thank you. Thank you. And when I give my thank you for closed business, I always say one cake, one cookie at a time. Because if somebody like, again, like Patrick probably, or Wilbur, 3 or 4 good referrals for consultants, and they'll probably bill 100 million, yeah? And so far, I think on my Connect, I have something, I think I'm getting to 90 or 91 million shillings of business from BNI members, literally one cake, one cookie at a time. When you think of the low value of an invoice for a cake, for that to have amounted to 90 million shillings, it's because people give freely. We have a member in our chapter, I keep joking about it, his name is Wentz Bender. Wentz has introduced me to all his family, such that when I go to their functions, when I take cake to their weddings, they actually think I'm from Shane. And some of them start asking me, oh, have the judges from Nitoma arrived? What about the ones from, because they think I'm one of them. And I just go with the flow. What can you do? But where would you have got that naturally? In any other setting, you would have just been the cake person. Bring your cake, put it there and bust. So I think that's one thing that BNI has really brought home to me. The impact is real. And every time you experience that, it makes you feel stronger about doing the same for somebody else.
Thank you very much, Sophie. From talks to the importance of videos, we realized that we cannot work in a vacuum as social beings. We have decided to join a network of like-minded professionals, and we can only leverage and maximize all that this has to offer by working the right kind of balance, the human touch, the good and the better of givers gain. So thank you very much for that. And now, ladies and gentlemen, a first thank you to all our speakers for sharing these stories, their insights and their thoughts about the Givers Gain philosophy and the key value that it is for us BNI members. I will now like to open the question and answer session to the public and audience. Do please send us in your questions because we would like to know what you think, what you need to ask, and what you'd like to share. And I already have one question from Rosalie Olunloyo. The question is, how are each of our panelists, by the way, are super engaging, cultivating such strong values in their staff teams? How is that going? That is indeed a good question to know how this works with teams and staff. Dr. Vincent, may I ask you to answer this kindly?
Thank you very much, Rafi, and thank you very much, Rosalind. I think, like, again, Dr. Meisner says, people don't really care how much you know until they know that you really, really care. So it's all very easy. I know for most of our institutions, we want to build positive cultures that are based on values, but most time we'll spend money on coaching and bringing in experts and sending people overseas for all these trainings. But when they look at you, the individual, what they see sometimes tells a totally different story. So for me, I make it my mission to live the story. In fact, I say they say, they say pictures worth 1,000 words, but I think actions are even much, much louder. Say, for example, if something spills in our facility and it's a medical facility, and maybe the lady that helps us keep that place clean is not present, I'm not going to yell commands and say, you, nurse, come and clean, I'll actually go pick up the rag and clean the place, yeah? Because it is my hope that I can grow this institution to a place or to a point where I can actually retire in the next 10 years. But if I don't pass down those values by showing them, then believe it or not, I'm still going to be here working well into my 80s. As you know, doctors never retire. So I want to make sure that I break that. But you have to lead by doing, and people also have to see your heart. I make it a priority, maybe once every month or once every 2 months, to have lunch with one of our employees, because sometimes we assume that our employees know where we are coming from and they know where we are going. But most times, they come, they plug in, they find the machine is really running, and there's never time for the process to stop for them to get to know you. So you have to be deliberate and come and explain to them that, you see, sometimes the reason that I act the way I act, or I reason the way I reason, is because of this is where I've come from. And you also paint for them a picture of where it is that you want to go. Because otherwise, if they don't see where you're going, how can they follow you? Thank you very much, Rafi.
Thank you very much, Dr. Vincent. It is indeed important to walk the walk and not just talk to the talk. Setting examples and living these fundamentals is very, very important. Mark, may I ask you as well how you relate to the Giver's Gain philosophy within your staff and team?
Rosalie's question is a super question. Actually, it had me thinking for a second there. I was like, that's a sort of light bulb. I'm like, what am I doing actually? Come to think about it. And when I think back, really, it's just to agree or to concur with Dr. Wachenga, is leading by example. Leading by example. That's the beginning. I don't know if I'm doing anything else more proactively or more intentionally than that, but I know it is living by example, which is very important for me. If you're not living out the values that you're communicating to your people, then you sort of set a double standard, and you come off as a bit inconsistent, and so it's living it out. I try to live it out as much as possible. It's something, again, that I told you I've grown up with. It's just part of the DNA. I'm not going to withhold stuff and say, just give me this in order for me to give you that. Sort of quid pro quo relationship. Many times, by the way, when you approach it from the perspective of abundance, then essentially there's almost nothing the other person can give back to you that will be equal, that will square off with what you've given to them. So if you're going to give to them for that reason, you risk being disappointed that they did not return to you in equal measure. I gave you a Mercedes. How can you just give me a hug or a thank you? I want something more than that back, and even another Mercedes may not be equal to it, so it's a bit of a gray area. So you give not because you want to get something back, but you give just because it's who you are, it's the way you go about things. And so I would say for my staff, I need to be a bit more intentional in terms of, maybe a program or talks and stuff like that. But for one, I know that I live it out.
Thank you, Mark. The importance of teamwork is obviously very important, and it's good that you realize there's always room for improvement in the way we live this out. Sophie, may I come to you with the same question, please?
Thanks, Rafi. That's a tough question from Rosalie in some ways. And I think for me, it's a journey that I am still on because the business has gone through a lot of change recently. And it's very difficult sometimes to get people to change along with you to see the vision that you have. But some of the things that I do is I do a lot of recognition. Whenever people do well, celebrate, have have sport drinks, get KFC, little things that make people really happy and feel recognized. We do Employee of the Year, where they vote for one of their colleagues, whoever has done best, and we send them off on a trip, and things to make them feel like when you do good, it will be rewarded. We share customer feedback with them, and we always try and tie the customer feedback straight back to our own values, to make sure that they keep seeing that every time we make a customer say, wow, we are achieving what we are about, so that they start to think probably, I am here for a paycheck, but I am here to have that wow impact on someone else. The other way that I'm trying to do it, again, I confess I'm not there yet, is, and probably they will not see it as giving at all. I think they'll see it as I'm giving them a hard time, is I more and more avoid giving them any answers. When they ask me a question, I reply with a question, simply so that I can get them to develop their own solution finding, to empower them and say, look, you're in charge, you deal with it. If I wasn't here, what would you have done? And I'm hoping that in that way, whether they stay with Michaela's or they move on, they will always become a better decision maker, because the way they solve a problem will no longer be to pass it to somebody else. I know they don't see it that way now, they might in a few years' time. But I think, like Mark said, there are ways to be a lot more intentional around human resources, and also around embedding some of these values among the staff. And I think these are some of the things that this lockdown has given time to reflect on and see what are the other things that we could do to get our staff to think wider, to think beyond just their little role. I always wish that when someone has worked for me, when they move on, they should be completely different. They should be much, much better. They will ace their next interview. And I've been able to achieve that a lot in the corporate world, but I think I'm having to unlearn and relearn new ways of achieving that now in the SME world, because the skill set is quite different. The education levels are quite different. The way of thinking, their ambitions are quite different. But because they're people, ultimately they all want to succeed. I think I just have to be more creative about how to get that success for them.
Thank you, Sophie. Givers Gain is a lot more than just holding someone's hand or spoon feeding them. It is very important that the ripples, spread out a lot more. And in fact, if you are giving people tools to adapt and skills that they can work with in the long term, that is very important. Thank you very much to our speakers for answering that question, and to Rosalie for asking it. And now I would like us to kindly allow Jackie Namara to address the speakers. She had raised her hand. Is it possible to hear her kindly?
Yes, I hope you can hear me. Thank you very much.
Yes, we can, Jackie. Welcome. Thank you.
To Mark, Sophie, and Dr. Vincent, thank you for sharing such powerful testimonies and stories about how you see Givers Gain playing out in your lives. Listening to you and the stories around the businesses, I see that there is a common thread that you all have a family upbringing and an environment which nurtured this concept of Givers Gain. It might not have been called that at the time. And you've all in some way, in answering the questions, kind of confirmed that BNI has just reinforced what you already knew to be true. What I would like to pick your brains on is how can we sort of package and bottle that and sell it to people who don't have the benefit of growing up in an environment where they've seen that ideology play out. They've not been in an environment where they've ever seen the value of giving. Because I think we find ourselves in a situation where you might have staff or people that you have to do projects with, and you seem to be the crazy one when you're the one who is giving. I know people are telling me, but why are you always giving out information for free? And I'm thinking, but I get it for free. So there is so much that even if I gave it all for free, it's not going to, there's no impact. I mean, I could charge for it, but it doesn't occur to me. So how do we get that principle spread, like Mark was saying, that gospel? How can we spread it beyond sort of our immediate circles to just get more and more business people and more of the younger generation to embrace this as a way of life?
Thank you very much, Jackie, for that question. And in true marketing style to our speakers, you have been asked to bottle and package this miraculous cure, as it were, for the new generations. So may I please ask Dr. Vincent what his prescription would be?
Thank you very much, Rafi. And Jackie, you do raise a very complex question. I'm not sure we have time to restructure the family setting in Uganda, but with all those challenges notwithstanding, I think one of the things that most good people or most successful people, even BNI people, one of the things that we've always wanted to do is most people do not want to develop uncomfortable relationships. For example, when you come to BNI, we know that one of our core values is relationships. I know I've personally been able to make very, very great friends in BNI, but when we're trying to develop relationships, we want to kind of have a choice and choose the person that you like, or the person, in Uganda's case, the person from the place that you come from who speaks the same language. And that also sometimes happens even when we're trying to influence people outside of our ordinary settings. Because you find that even when people are showing acts of kindness, they're mostly helping people that are kind of, connected to them. So we need to be able to spread out wider. But the other thing which is a bit dangerous, but which I'm not afraid to prescribe, is that let's not only let in people into our success stories. Yeah, we need people, employees, family members, people that we meet. We need to tell them where we've had challenges, where we've messed up, and where we don't know. You might be a CEO and you need to make a choice. And, just be honest and say, I don't know what the decision it is that I need to make. And I think by being vulnerable in developing our relationships, I think we'll be able to influence more people, because I think generally most people can be influenced if you actually demonstrate that they can depend on you and you're not judging them and you're not trying to turn them into something. But well, that is just but a doctor's prescription. Mark might have a better one. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Vincent, for that prescription. Doctor's orders rule. And Mark, may I ask you kindly to package something for Jackie and the audience?
Yeah, so since the doctor has taken care of the doctor's side perspective and prescription, I am sort of looking at it as a preacher instead. To have a different perspective, I'll package it as a preacher, I think. And Jackie used a good word, gospel. And it sort of is like a gospel, give us gain. And what has happened with the gospel, it has moved for very, 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 very many years, quite successfully to every corner of the world. And that success has come from individuals living out and sharing these values and these principles. I think it ultimately boils down to that. Living it out, the stories we have shared and that, brought about Jackie's question, were that we had somebody to look at. We had a role model, somebody set the example for us. And so I think the responsibility is ours to carry that on, to carry on, to pass on the baton by living out this value of give us gain. It should, somebody, as I talked about being a brand, somebody should know you as a person who gives. And, and it should infect them. And the next person will say, this is such a good quality. This person inspires me by being such a giver. It's a way of life that I would like to subscribe to, and then on and on and on and on. So I think I think there's only so much you can do. There is only so much you can do. BNI has done quite a bit, 35 years, 70 countries, over, 250,000 businesses living out this principle. So, in Uganda, 5 years ago, maybe it wasn't so clear. 5 years later, there's definitely 120 plus businesses that are living out to give us gain. And so I think it's just a wave. We play our part. For those who are in acting like Rafi, there's you have a role, and your role lasts a certain duration on the set, and then maybe you exit and somebody else comes in. But while you're there, that's your opportunity to influence and to have that impact, and people will remember that character, for that reason. So while we are on the stage of life now, we live out this value, and when we exit, we are remembered for that, and hopefully along the way we would have infected many other people. Hopefully it can spread faster and stay longer than Corona.
Thank you very much, Mark, for that. I'm sure this is a good disease to catch. So thank you. And Sophie, may I please ask you how you're going to bake this for us then?
Bake it and make it go viral, literally.
Yes.
It's actually quite a difficult thing to do. If someone hasn't been born or raised with certain values or certain sort of code of ethics for themselves, it can be very difficult to turn them. And I think one of the ways that you can start to bring about that change, because this is something that must come from within. I can't take them to a Givers Gain class and they come back when they're givers. I can't order some from the US when someone is flying back and say, oh, please bring me 2 cartons of Givers Gain, and I pass it around. So it's something that must get nurtured. It must come from within, and it must come with sincerity. I think one of the ways I would look at trying to do that is actually by living by example. Keep giving people the opportunity to see that this is just the way things get done, because then you don't have to think about it. You don't have to calculate around it. You don't have to use a baking terminology, you don't need a recipe in order to do it. You will just get it. You'll just get it done. But it's certainly not a value that you can instill, let's say, in your staff or in people you come across and interact with by telling them to live it. It's something that you can impart by living it. It's one of those, you shall be known by your deeds, not your words kind of thing, that when they say it in you, it's very easy for someone to mimic a good behavior that they observe. Yeah, but if they don't see it in you, but then you pull out a nice PowerPoint and say, look, this is what you're going to be doing, they're not going to buy it. So I think it's very much one of the living by example, that it makes it much easier for it to be recognized, and you see that, look, this person has done X. It means I could consider doing that for someone else. I mean, we've reopened recently after the lockdown, and for a few of the orders that came in, I was telling them it's complimentary, it's complimentary, it's complimentary. And one of them, I think they gossiped amongst themselves and picked one who they thought was the bravest to call me and ask me if I had gone completely mad. We've had 2 months of lockdown, and every other order I'm raising, I'm telling them it's complimentary. And they were like, madam, why don't we wait and give them the freebies at Christmas? Right now, we need the money. But then you say, look, this customer, I sent you a message. She lost her mom during lockdown. This is our chance to sort of commiserate. This other one. And then there was one more that went in yesterday, and they said, did she also lose her mom? And I said, no, she's craving cake. She has just been thinking about getting cake for the whole of lockdown, but all the options I've given her, she's telling me she just doesn't have the money right now. She's asked me if she can pay me in a month or so. Guys, just give her cake. And I don't think they could understand what I meant, that someone can literally just be wanting cake this much But thankfully, Jenny from D&J came in yesterday. I don't know if Jenny's on the call, but I think she helped me to make them understand, because Jenny ordered a cake, came in, and I had told them, please prepare a knife and fork for her in a takeaway bag. That cake might not reach home. And she walked in, sat and said, bring my cake, got a knife, hacked into it right then and there. The guy at the cafe called me and said, I've understood what you meant about somebody craving cake. So yesterday he said to me, can you give me all your friends or our customers who are craving cake, and let's see what we can do for them. So it was a complete turnaround. Now he is being the generous, and I'm like, hey, we don't have money, we're out of luck. And he told me, yeah, but people are craving cake. And so you do things like that. I think today I've seen a message flash up saying, can we put at least some little cupcakes? So a customer we've not seen for a long time, if they happen to come by, at least let's give them a little cupcake. So I think when you live the example, the staff start to see the impact. I don't know how joyful the look on Jenny's face was, but everybody was just so happy seeing Jenny enjoying cake. And I think that alone gives them that need, that look, if somebody really would like to enjoy this thing or to do something, help them along with it. It's not always about the money.
Thank you so much, Sophie. It's important to know, let there be cake, number one. And second, it is also very important to remember what you were saying, that if there is fertile soil, then the seed indeed shall blossom. If we lead by example, number one, true to our word, and also living the BNI reality, this intrinsic value that we've all been talking about. When people are surrounded by people who are preaching it, leading it, living it, you can do nothing else but blossom and flourish as well at the same time. Jackie, thank you so much for your question, and I hope that you receive some good packaging, baking, and prescription from that. And now, ladies and gentlemen, I would like us to kindly call on Susan Sipirwa. I apologize for mispronouncing names. She'd also raised her hand. Susan, what is your question for our speakers today?
Thank you, Rafi, and thank you to our panelists. I'm really loving the storytelling, because in each story, there's just so much to learn from each story. So thank you, Mark. Thank you, Dr. Vincent. Thank you, Sophie. My question for you is, we always have like newer members who are joining BNI. What networking tips would you give them that would allow them to, because Give Us Gain is the underlying philosophy of BNI. What networking tips would you give them to be able to actually start living out the Give Us Gain philosophy? How, especially in terms of networking. So I think I would like to hear from all three of you as well on that one. What would be your advice for somebody on how to actually start living out the Give Us Gain philosophy via networking? Thank you.
Thank you, Susan. Dr. Vincent, may I ask you to share your thoughts on that, please?
Thank you very much. I think for me, what would be the simplest tip is that when you meet the CEO of MTN, when he's at MTN, he behaves a certain way. When he's at his home, he behaves a different way. When you meet, the president, when he's speaking to his cabinet, he behaves a certain way that commands and demands respect and to be treated a certain way. So I think for someone that's just joining, it's important that you actually process it in your mind that this group that you've joined, these are people that are actually going to be your sales force. I don't know whether that makes sense. So you're the CEO, and given that you're the CEO and all the members are your sales force, you must raise your personal bar to a certain level. I don't know whether that makes sense. You cannot be a CEO in a company where you're getting, insights and advice from everybody else. It's very good, but you must set the direction that the company is going. So, and how do you do that? That sounds a bit complex. Do the minimum that is expected of you. Simple things. Show up on time. Okay? If you have an appointment, keep the appointment. use a diary. If you're coming to a meeting, look the part, okay? There's no one that's going to want to build a relationship with you and give you a 1 billion referral if you look like, you know, your business is worth 50,000, yeah? So you have to be very, very intentional. These are people that are willing soldiers. They're like an army. They will die for you. They will do everything for you, but you must give them a cause. You must inspire them, and you must give them a purpose for which they are willing and going to die. So the very simplest thing, assume you're the CEO, everybody else is working for you, and the higher you set the bar, the higher will be your results. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Vincent. You're rallying up the forces there. Mark, may I ask you what trade secrets you would have to share with Susan about this?
For the new members who are coming into BNI?
Yep.
Again, you know, there are some basic life principles that we all live by, whether we accept them or not. And one of those is that do unto others as you would like to be done unto you. Treat others as you like to be treated. It's it doesn't get any simpler than that. It doesn't get any simpler than that. So we are often hypocritical, maybe subconsciously without knowing. You know, you'll tell somebody, first do this. But then, you know, you should look in the mirror and say, okay, what if the other person said, you first do it? Where would you end up? It would just be a ping pong. You'd go back and forth, you know? So it might seem like, you know, like you're compromising, but it's actually rising above, you know, rising above, being the bigger person. It might seem, I think also we fear, you know, we think we are taking a risk. I'm giving more than I'm getting. What if I don't get what I expect? You know, let me first wait and hold out and see. And then you start to lose the very essence of giver's gain. You don't give in order to receive. You give in order to impact somebody's life and put them in a better position, you know, hopefully solve their problem. That's why you give. The expectation is not that you will get back. It shouldn't be an expectation. So you give with no strings attached. So I think sometimes you just hold back without. If I asked you, why are you holding back? Why haven't you given first? You might find that you don't have a credible reason. You know, it's just the way it's done. That would be the answer. That's just how it's done. But you don't have a proper fundamental reason for not living it out. So I think mine is to say, take the risk. Take the risk. Imagine, take a risk and give without expecting. What a risk that is. What you have to lose, you know, perhaps nothing. So I think it's just doing to others as you would like to be done to you.
Thank you very much, Mark. It is important to run the risk of being pleasantly surprised and seeing where the giver's gain philosophy will take us. Ladies and gentlemen, I see that time is running us by. Sophie, may I ask you to answer this question as succinctly as possible, please? We do have two other hands raised. We do want to try and address those as well. Thank you.
Thanks, Rafi. How to get a new member to start living giver's gain? I think I would have the conversation by actually drawing on a different BNI value, which is a positive and supportive attitude. Because if you bring that positivity every day, it radiates, it draws people to you, and it puts you in a good place for people to want to work with you. Nobody needs a drama queen. Nobody wants someone who's always down in the dumps. Nobody needs someone who is always like sort of too in your face, too pushy, too aggressive. I think if you can embrace the positivity, the giver's gain starts to become actually quite easy. I'm not a natural networker. I had never belonged to any sort of networking organization before. Whatever I know has been drilled into me by Mark and Diana and their cane. but that cane comes with this thing that says a positive and supportive attitude. When you always know Mark is in the corner to fall back on. When things aren't going right, when things are getting a bit frustrating, there is someone who will always have that positivity. I think that in itself makes it easier to start to build trust, because you may not, like Mark is saying, you may not want to take that risk with someone you don't trust, someone you feel uncomfortable with, and that may mean that you're putting your own walls up, and therefore they can't reach you, and yet you're expecting something from them. So I think this opening up, being positive, be open-minded, and I like what Mark says, take a chance, take a risk on being pleasantly surprised, and you will find that it's quite rewarding.
Thank you very much, Sophie. Lucky for us, what a good and fast learner you are. May I please ask Lillian Katiso to share her question with us? And I might have to ask you kindly to choose which panelist you would like to have answer it. Lillian?
Hi, Rafi. Yes,
Hi.
I'm here. Hi, thank you for the panelists. I don't really have a question. I was just supplementing. There's someone who had asked a question. For those of us who are not born, I was going to say born givers, or were not exposed at an earlier age into the giving concept, how then do we learn it? And I was just trying to share what I've realized is when you give, you make the other person indebted. So we may not have grown up in the culture of family giving and our parents, our friends giving, but what I've realized a couple of years ago when I got a scholarship for my MBA, when I finished the scholarship, I felt so indebted to also give. You know, I felt like, these people, they don't know me, they did me a full scholarship. So I felt like I needed to give. And what I did, I started blogging about, business, finance, accounting, and I was just doing it purely for free. And then I realized actually, because of the fact that someone gave to me, I felt indebted to give. And with that, that's where the consultancy came out from. I was just about blogging for free. Then later on, I realized actually there are people who now needed a service. So out of my giving, how do you say, a business came out of. So to answer the question of those of us who did not know how to give, how can we learn? I think those who are givers should continue giving. And when you get the ball rolling as a giver, you'll create other people, you'll create like a community or a tribe of other givers. So it might take long, but I think the ball has to start rolling from somewhere. So I was just going to supplement on that. Thank you very much. I've enjoyed the testimonies and the stories.
Thank you very much, Lillian. It's wonderful to see that when we work in these schemes and in society, this deep-rooted psychological urge to do something nice in return comes out, and that we can give back. And now I would like to ask Olu, who had raised his hand, if he has a question for one of our speakers, kindly.
Thanks, Rafi. Thanks, panelists. My question is similar to the one asked about the new BNI members. My connection has been off and on, so I apologize in case someone has asked this before. But how do we ensure that we're able to encourage the old members? Because these are people who are already used to BNI way of business. And some of them might have had a very good experience, but in this new COVID dispensation situation we're in, might some of those old members start getting maybe agitated or impatient, or, I mean, there might be concerns, not from the new ones, but from our existing old members. How do you guys, how can they be encouraged to stick in there? Thank you.
Thank you very much for your question, Olu, and I would like to give all our panelists an opportunity to answer that. May I ask you to try and answer in a minute and a half? Dr. Vincent, are you ready? Steady, go.
Thank you very much, Rafi. Thanks, Olu. You do raise a good point, Olu. I know most times we're very concerned with the newer members and less so with the older members. But I think the one thing we need to remember is that BNI gives us a platform, not so much to receive, but a platform to give, a platform to contribute. I know there's even with this season, people are very focused about, how am I going to receive and things like that. But actually, if you turn it around, especially so for the older members, because they've been in business longer, they need to start asking themselves, how can we give more, especially to the newer ones? So if we can encourage the older members to actually give more and support the newer businesses, they might actually find their purpose. Because I must tell you, giving does feel really, really good. So I know we all asking and saying, referrals are drying up, but find a way. Chances are that because you're an older member, you have a bigger business, find ways of supporting people you did not support before, people in BNI, and let's see how we can get through this together, because I'm certain we truly will. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Vincent. Mark, may we hear from you about this?
Yeah,
and how to...
I think Olu asked a very, very good and interesting question, one that's easily ignored or can be overlooked. For the old member, I think you have it all together, and yet you're a human being. It comes undone from time to time. And for me, Olu, I think the secret for me, I think, that little secret philosophy that drives me is the abundance mentality. So I know that I have been richly given so that I can pass on, I can share with others and bless others in the process. And so, if you spot that an old member is having those sort of inhibitions and is not living this out, I think the first way is to just reach out to them, do another one-to-one with them. As Vincent was saying, BNI gives us the different tools to engage each other in these principles. And so I think, revisiting these members for a one-to-one, find out how you can help them. So the way you draw them out is by giving again. You're using the same weapon, so just give, fill them up, chop up their cup. They might just be going through, you mentioned this particular season, they might be going through a bit of a rough patch. They might have drained their energy and their juice. So you just need to top them up a little bit, and you do that by reaching out to them, doing a one-to-one, finding out how you can help them. By giving in that way, you're drawing somebody out to remember their old giving self.
Thank you very much, Mark. Sophie, may we ask your thoughts about this?
Thanks, Olu. It's a good question, and it's an easy one to forget, where you think that the seasoned members have everything sorted out and they're okay. And I would completely echo what Mark has said. Give them a call. If you notice they're a little more silent than usual, they're not as chatty, they seem a little withdrawn, maybe they're skipping meetings, give them a call. Give them a call. It's been a really lonely time that we've been in during this lockdown, and it's easy to get overwhelmed and start feeling like you're alone, or feeling like nobody will understand because everyone is saying, come on, chin up, everything will be okay. So you may actually be afraid to say, no, things are not looking okay. Things are really, really tight. So I think looking out for those, reach out, make a phone call, and I'll use a word Joanne used with me the other day. She says, allow yourself to be vulnerable. I'm like, I can't. But you need sometimes to allow yourself to be vulnerable, because that a problem shared is a problem sort of half solved, that you just feel like at least you've got it off your chest. Someone else has heard, someone has empathized. That is, it's a really important thing to do. And thanks for raising that question on.
Thank you very much, Sophie. Indeed, it is very important to remember, Ohana, that nobody gets left behind. And in BNI, I do believe we try very hard not to leave any of our team members behind and continuously check on each other. Thanks, Olu, for reminding us about this other fundamental as well. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very, very much. As we draw this webinar to a close, kindly allow me to thank you, the audience, for having joined us, for the questions that you've shared, for the beautiful quotes, for the support. A very, very big thank you to today's speakers for having shared their precious stories with us and sharing this culture of generosity, benefiting from the synergies, the networks, connections, and contacts. It goes to show what an exponentially growing spiral of opportunity BNI and its givers gain philosophy are. I would also like to thank Mr. Jude Kigozi for handling the back end and technicalities and teaching me a trick or two today. Thank you. I would like to thank our National Director, Diana Nsima Chibuka, for organizing today's talk. To our BNI members, continue doing the best you can and living up to BNI's core values. To our visitors today, if you wish to find out more about us, meet these amazing people, do please ask and check in how you can join one of our meetings. There is so much more to BNI than meets the eye. Thank you very, very much, everyone. Thank you for the opportunity of hosting you today. And as parting words, I would like to say that this kind of meeting, sharing and talking gives us the opportunity to realize that we must give more in order to get more. It is in the generous giving of ourselves that produces the most generous harvest. Ladies and gentlemen, I wish you a good night, blessed weekend, stay safe. We shall come out stronger after this lockdown. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Good night.
you.
Good weekend.
Thanks, everyone.
Weekend.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Great work, folks.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Angani mboka chimwezi mulamba kutera.